Please like our videos, share them with your friends, and lastly, subscribe to our channel. Fred is a 20-year veteran of the Army Special Operations Command and the owner of Storm Tactical Consulting. Fred served as a Special Forces medic for a number of years before trying out and getting selected to serve as an operator in a Special Missions unit. Over a long career, Fred has served as an assaulter, breacher, medic, sniper, human intel specialist, and finishing up as a dog hand. Fred's background: 20 years of service as an 18 Delta Special Forces medic and later as an operator in the Army Special Missions Unit. He is also the co-founder of Silencio Coffee Company. So man, tell me, how did this all start for you? I mean, tell me high school, right after high school. I mean, a lot of people have dreams. They're going to go play football or they're going to, work for their dad's business. I mean, where were you at?
So in high school, it's kind of a weird thing. I went to a vocational high school for culinary arts. My big dream, if you will, at that age was to be a chef and possibly in my own restaurant. I started working in restaurants at a pretty young age while I was in high school. I graduated high school and went to culinary school and got an associate's degree in culinary arts. And during that time, I had been working in restaurants a couple of years, and then I worked in the restaurant business after I graduated. I actually was on the line, did a lot of line cooking, broiler, saute, that kind of stuff, and then worked my way up to sous chef. Sous chef, if you're not familiar with a restaurant, is the 2IC of the kitchen. You have an executive chef or a head chef over you, and then you're the guy or the gal that's kind of in charge and running stuff under that person. I was young. I was 19 years old, and I loved cooking.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't like the business side of it, the stress that was involved with restaurant businesses, because anyone who's worked in that field knows, especially like the executive chefs and, back of the house, a lot of executive chefs my superiors they were overweight, high blood pressure. They were almost all of them were alcoholics. They were not in a great physical state, right? And as a young guy, 19-year-old, working every holiday, every weekend, really long shifts, like sometimes 18 hours on like New Year's Eve, big holidays. So you don't really have a social life as a young man or young person. And, the only nights off I had were Monday nights, and nobody does anything on Monday nights. So I don't know, for me, seeing that side of it was a different kind of stress. And, I had been watching movies and, talking to other dudes and fathers that were in the military. And I was really interested in special forces, the Green Berets for the Army side. I was like, one day I just woke up, I was like, I want to be a Green Beret. So screw the restaurant stuff. I went to the recruiting office downtown and I asked them, hey, I want to be a Green Beret. How can we do this? They're like, well, you can't do that right off the bat. You have to already be in the Army for a short period of time and in some other specialty, and then you can try out. Because this was before the 18 X-ray program. Mm-hmm. If some people are familiar with that. So I was like, all right, what do you got available? I was kind of apprehensive. I didn't want a long-term commitment. So I didn't want to sign up for 6 years and hate it after a year and fucking be miserable. So I wanted to do the minimum amount of time, and I qualified for a 2-year enlistment. But the jobs for a 2-year enlistment weren't like the top jobs. They were like fuel supply and different combat arms jobs. I signed up for air defense artillery, Stinger missile crew member. It was a 2-year hitch. They told me I could go to Ranger school and do all this other stuff, which was a lie at that time. And I figured out shortly after being in the Army for a little while that this kind of wasn't what I had in mind. So after I did my time, I eventually tried out. I didn't try out for the SF, for the Green Berets right away. I actually heard about something a little more low key and kind of kept on the down low at the time was the Army Special Missions Unit, right? It goes by other names, but while we're on here, we'll just call it the SMU. And I saw the Chuck Norris movie and I was like, ooh, that looks pretty cool. I watched a recruiting video, went to a brief, took a PT test, all that. And I was like, this looks like something I want to do. So I went to the selection in West Virginia. Long story short, I didn't make it. I failed to make a time standard on an evaluation. So during my exit interview there, the commander was like, hey, you're motivated, you're young, you're healthy. Why don't you go get some experience, try SF or Rangers or something like that, and then come back and try again. And you probably have a better chance of making it. So I did that. I went to the very next Special Forces Assessment and Selection course, which was I think it was January of 2000. Went, I prepped for that just like I did for the other one. And I was in decent shape. Went and it's kind of funny. North Carolina, Camp McCall, they had the most snow in a snowstorm in their history of the recorded snowfall, 18 inches halfway through. So I'm out there doing team events and all this snow, and dudes are quitting just because it's cold or it's snowy. There's no traction. They were falling, carrying big, heavy logs and shit. It was interesting, but I sucked it up, tucked my chin, kind of kept driving on. I made it, thankfully, and then I got assessed to be an 18 Delta, right? A Special Forces medical sorry. And that's a very long pipeline in itself. That's like a almost 3-year pipeline when you incorporate all the stuff, so your school language, medical training, Robin Sage, all that stuff. So I did that. I was a first-time go at everything, luckily, in the medical field, surprisingly, because it's a lot of studying. I'm not exaggerating when I said I was studying 6 hours every night on some nights. Anatomy and physiology and all that stuff. I made it, went through, got my Green Beret, and was on orders to 5th Special Forces Group at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Not my first choice. It was like my third choice.
Mm-hmm.
Went to Fort Campbell, checked in with my team, seemed like a fairly squared away team. I was the new medic. I was a young junior medic. I had a senior medic over me. And that's right around the time, shortly after that, the global war on terrorism, right? The GWOT kicked off. This was post 9/11. When did we invade Iraq? 2003, right? The beginning of. So I got there at the end of 2002. Sorry, I dropped something. And then right off the bat, man, we went into isolation and started planning for the Iraq invasion. Did a couple combat rotations with 5th Group. As an 18 Delta, got a ton of experience with combat trauma, a lot of clinical medicine, a lot of family medicine, actually, with some of the local burn patients and so forth. A lot of kids, a lot of elderly, pulled a whole lot of teeth, a lot of rotten ass teeth in Iraq. You probably. Anywho, there's a few Iraqis running around, some old timers that got probably 3 or 4 teeth left in their head because I pulled. Anywho, there was a point in time after a couple rotations, like, you know what, I need to try again before I get in my comfort zone and like it here too much. So I went, did another packet, went to West Virginia a second time 6 years later, and lo and behold, I made it into the SMU. So my next stage or gate, if you will, was the operator training course, OTC, about 6 months in time. Just to kind of give you the cliff notes of that, it was hard, scrutinized constantly every day, and you were being watched under the microscope like 3 or 4 dudes at a time watching you up in the catwalks. CQB being the hardest phase where the most attrition happened, right? The highest attrition.
Right.
Somehow I made it through all that. Luckily, a lot of luck played my part. Went across the hall of my squadron and jumped right into it, man. Combat rotations, because that was like the height of the GWOT in Iraq. That was like 05 I got there. 06 I was graduating. So it was right in the prime of Iraq, Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, Sadr City, all that stuff was like raging, and just did some combat rotations as an assaulter. Did some other stuff, kind of like low key stuff. Did some sniper stuff, and I think I went to the K9 program. Right, did that bit. I did a little of everything. Right, jack of all trades, master of none. And then I retired. 2012, I retired after a couple of surgeries and some other haphazards and mishaps and stuff like that later. So that was kind of my brief description of my military career.
Now, how did it work for you? Let's go back to really, being 19. I mean, was your father in this or your mom in this? I mean, a lot of guys don't have role models. I mean, did you have role models or some people to guide you or train you up?
No,
get you prepped?
I had my godfather, my uncle. He was probably the closest male role model. Both of those two guys kind of made huge in raising me. Neither one of them were, well, my dad, that's not true. My dad was in the Army during the Vietnam time frame. He was a reservist. His brother, my Uncle Joe, was a Vietnam vet. So we had some military guys in my family, no career guys or anything like that. Just typical, I don't know, I guess typical Rhode Islanders, they don't really go anywhere or leave. They comfort zone and they're happy with their jobs. And I was the black sheep of the family, man. I left and I mean, I visit still. I still talk to my family, stuff like that. As far as military role models, no. I mean, I had a couple of people in the restaurant business, bartenders that had husbands that were like Marines, and I had some counseling and some mentorship through them, but kind of just went at it. John Wayne, Clint Eastwood movies, those kind of things. That was my, I guess, motivation.
So, I mean, for a lot of young people, they have just this attitude that they can do it. I mean, did you ever have a doubt in your brain that you could do these things? Or you just had this confidence?
I can do it. It's weird. I'm not trying to put myself on a pedestal by any means.
Yeah.
There's mindsets, right? There's different personality types. There's different mindsets. I believe firmly, if you want something bad enough, you're going to do whatever the fuck it takes, as long as you stay healthy, right? Mind you, that to do. Like I did it, I went to 2 selections for that. Most people do 2 selections. Some do it on the first try. Those are the minority though. So yeah, it wasn't easy, but like it's definitely achievable if you set your mind to it.
Yeah. And so getting in, I mean, once you got that beret the first time, right? You get your Green Beret. I mean, what was going through your head? You're like relief, or were you?
So I got a Green Beret. Woo, look out. And then guess what? You go to an ODA, now you're the new guy. So
yeah.
I got to prove myself all over again. And I got to, hopefully I don't fuck up real bad. And, everybody kind of looks at me like, yeah, this guy's worth keeping around. I didn't have some of the greatest leadership in my early years in SF, as far as like the team leads and so forth, at least in my opinion. But I had others. I moved to another ODA, and I had a really great team sergeant, my last hoorah. Unfortunately, it was my shortest time on an ODA right before I went back to selection again.
Now, how about expectations, man? Getting there. I mean, was it everything that you thought it was going to be? Looking from the outside in, you've done something that millions of people haven't done and will never do. And so that's a feather in your cap. But and some of those things, that's the most successful or wonderful thing someone will ever achieve. Is that your greatest, most important thing? Is it your kids? I mean, what's your most wonderful achievement in life?
Yeah, I've been asked that question before. I was the best day of my life was 2 days, right? The birth of both of my children.
Yeah.
My marriage, I guess 3 days. And then after that was making the unit.
Yeah.
And that was graduating the Q course, in that order.
Now you've had a 20-year career. I mean, so how did that work out for you mentally? You knew you're going to deploy and you knew you're going to go into the role that you're going to go into. A lot of people are not ready. They go into service and, I've had this conversation with many people, you know. They want to go in and they want to kick some ass. That's what they want to do. And if it's just that they want a job, well, that's kind of secondary or tertiary. It's not really a primary thing. They want to go out there and kick some ass. But, you know, when you get in there, you're in that kind of role, right? You're an assaulter. You're going to be a sniper. You're going to do K9. You're going to do all the stuff. Medic is kind of, yeah, you're doing that. That's not your primary job. It's just like a Marine Corps. You know, everyone is a rifleman. So you're mentally ready for all this. You know, you knew you're going to deploy probably 5 to 15 times, probably, right?
It was. I'm here today, but honestly, for like, especially for the SF side, fifth group, there was really preparation, I guess, mentally. I was wanting to go, man. I was just wanting to get into it, start working. For the unit, there was a little bit of like an, oh my gosh, I hope I'm ready.
Yeah.
Because you hear all these horror stories in OTC. One of them was, and I probably shouldn't say this out loud, was, hey, for your final culmination, you're going to do CQB on a real target in combat. Like, we're going to fly you. This wasn't cadre. This was like, you know, the peanut gallery talking, right? The guys talking about, oh, I heard we're going to get sent. We're going to blow out on an aircraft and go over to Iraq and do a real hit. And I'm thinking like, what? Like, so that was not the case, by the way.
Yeah.
No, thank God, right?
Well, we see a lot of it. You know, we see what's his name? I think it's Haney or whoever did the show, the unit. I mean, well, you know, what's the common myth about your job or field of expertise that's just we get it wrong in Hollywood? And I know we could get it really wrong, but
Hollywood. So, like the unit show, Eric, he was spot on with his advising because that was the early years, like being a plank holder, and the evolution, the beginning, right? When the evolution of the unit and their tactics, making their own equipment and fabricating shit. I mean, they still kind of do that to a point, but it's not like it was back then. He was actually spot on. A lot of those missions that they did, now they were scaled down. They would do just a single team doing a mission like a whole troop would probably have done, but they're pretty accurate, man, because that was like most of that time was the 80s, and they were still kind of figuring shit out. It's not anything like it is now. Now it's a little more, not a little more, a lot more organized. You have a whole section devoted to research and development, test and evaluation of new everything. Soldier systems, weapon systems, visual systems, everything. You name it. There's a section dedicated to that. And a lot of that stuff that they test and evaluate gets picked up by the rest of SOCOM and eventually the military, right? Look at the uniforms the Army's wearing now, right? Multicams. We started early 2000s. So, the prototypes of different patterns and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of that's coming out of what you guys do is really the shooting stances, shooting styles, the tactics. It bleeds out to the common culture. It may take a year or 5 or 10, but it definitely gets out there. And then you guys have got to be ahead of everyone else constantly. And I think you guys do that because of all the schools you go to and all the people who are really good instructors. You probably have a lot of chances to go to some of the best schools, I would think, in the world, right?
Yeah, we hire, we'll do a train up and we'll hire a contract shooter, like professional, competitive shooters, Rob Latham, Benny Cooley.
Yeah.
Just a couple, we bring those guys and we'll do a week or two with them to kind of sharpen our skills and make us, we're always trying to balance the accuracy with the speed, right? And they game to us. We still, focus on accuracy. That's primary, but then they bring the hints and the shortcuts to the speed side, which is awesome. I learn a ton from those guys every time I see them. Even now as a contractor in JSOC, we bring in a couple of those guys, and every once in a while I'll kind of eavesdrop and I'll listen in on the range, and kind of like, oh yeah, I remember that. So it's a cool place. You hire or they hire the best of the best in every aspect, whether it's support, service support, direct support, operators, you name it, mechanics, anybody.
Yeah. So, well, let's actually go back. Let's go back into the past. So 2003, the war kicks off, right, with 9/11, and then you're deploying sometime. Let's talk about that, the Green Berets, and then how you got into the SMU, the small mission unit. What was your thinking at the time? Did you always know you were going to depart? Because you said you were watching it on TV, you watched Chuck Norris. So how did your teammates take it? Did they know you're leaving? I mean, how did that work out for you?
Story. So, all right, here we go. So when I got to my ODA, I mentioned the leadership. I didn't have the best leadership, right?
Okay.
At least my first team sergeant was kind of an a-hole. My initial counseling, he sat me down in the team room, him and I, that was it. First thing he opened up with was, I hate 18 Deltas. Delta being a special forces medic. He was a team sergeant, but before that he was an engineer sergeant. He was a special forces engineer. He's like, I hate 18 Deltas. You guys think you're smarter than everyone. You think you know everything. So that's the first impression of my team sergeant. I'm like, oh great, I got this guy that's got some kind of hair on his ass about medics. Come to find out later, he tried to transition to 18 Delta and flunked out of the course because that first 2 weeks, man, anatomy and physiology.
Yeah.
I think he was second or third week. I don't remember exactly, but he failed or he dropped out. So he had a little hair on his ass for medics. And I had that. I had to deal with that the whole time. And he was a know-it-all. He think he knew everything. And eventually he retired and went away. And I had a better team sergeant. Did he support me going on to bigger and better things? Not at fucking all. Excuse my language. I told him during that initial couple months that one of my career goals was to go to Delta selection and hopefully make it. He hated that place. He hated everything to do with that place. I don't know, man. He was one. You got two kinds of guys in SF. Guys that love the unit and always, they want to go there. Maybe they never didn't make it, whatever. Or you got guys that hate it. And it's usually guys that didn't make it, right?
Yeah.
For a reason. And, I don't care, man. Whatever. It's not for everybody. But this guy hated it, and he made it well known that he hated it. Luckily, he was not my team sergeant when I did put in my packet to go back to selection, because I'm pretty sure he would have did everything in his power to stop that. But even the senior leadership, my battalion commander had a battalion formation while I was at selection, and he told all the guys that were thinking about it, if you're thinking about it, you better make it, because if you come back here and you didn't make it, it's on. I'm like, really? Is that what we've come to? Like senior leaders, we're talking about lieutenant colonels and more. Just beating guys up verbally if they want to try to hope to do better things. Like, what does that say about you as a leader? First of all, right? Like, I get it. You're good guys. Like, I understand that. That's the military mentality. But come on, man, you got to support you guys that want to move on and do other shit, right?
Yeah, leadership should actually support you, man. They should encourage you and put all the tools in place. I remember talking to my sergeant one day and said, I'm calling you out, man, to step up, be a better leader. I'm calling you out right now. So he wouldn't told everybody I wanted to fist fight him. Well, I didn't want to fist fight him, but after that, I realized what a weak leader was, because he didn't want to actually step up and he didn't want to be a leader. He just wanted the title, but he didn't want any responsibility. I think a lot of that's just kind of sad. So you had that. And you probably did it burn your ears, man? Did it get back to you that that was the attitude?
He was like my best buddy on the ODA.
Yeah.
He told me, bro, because I think I called back here after I made it, and it was right before I was flying back. It's like, hey man, like I made it, everything's good. What's going on? He's like, bro, I'm glad you made it. And he told me that the dump of that battalion formation.
Yeah.
2nd Battalion, 5th Group. I forget the commander's name at that time, but what an asshole. He threatened all the guys that they were thinking about it. Hey, if you go and you don't make it, you're going to be sucking when you come back.
So how did it shift? I mean, what was the mentality from, special forces to small mission unit? I mean, was it more structured? Was it less structured? How did it work when you actually showed up first day on the job?
right. It's structured, right?
Okay.
It's more relaxed in the means that like military convention uh kind of fall by the wayside. There's a point in OTC. So you start off calling all your instructors Sergeant Smith or Sergeant Jones or Mr. Randall or Mr. Pomegranate or whatever their last name is if it's a civilian. Because
Mhm.
we have contractors that were also retired unit members. Like my cadre, the civilian contractors, they were all Mogadishu guys, and some of them are still there, and some of them
Yeah.
I talk to. They're fucking great people, man. The active duty guys, we call them, sergeant, whatever. And then there's a point where they stop you and like, all right, you're at this gate. Everybody is on a first name basis. You still maintain respect in your military bearing, but you can address Joe and John and Bob and Bill. I'm like, this is pretty fucking cool. All right. And then you graduate, you get a high five, you pat you on the back, you drink whiskey, beer, whatever. Then you go across to your squadron and they welcome you. But now you're a new guy on an assault team, typically.
Mhm.
You're starting from scratch. It's not quite the same Sergeant so and so or whatever. It's like, hey, I'm Alex or hey, I'm Bob. But you're still proving yourself every day. You're still
Yeah.
trying, meet that level of expectation. And you're learning also, right? You're learning the team SOPs, the troop SOPs, the squadron SOPs. It's like you're, drinking through that proverbial fire hose all the time until you're like, you've been there a while, and then you get another batch of new guys that come to the
Mhm.
squadron.
Now, do you guys have a lot of disciplinary action in there? I don't think you would, but I mean, does
We
that
do,
happen? Yeah.
as my class as a whole across the whole unit, I remember many guys. They say selection is an ongoing process, right?
Mhm.
True, because I know guys that get fired after being in squadron for a few years because they fucked something up, whatever it was.
Mhm.
Maybe accidental discharge, maybe they had some kind of like impropriety or bad decision or judgment call, moral, ethical, legal dilemma, whatever, DUI, who knows, and they get sent away. They get either depends on what they did, but yeah, that's
Now,
good
what?
fun.
Yeah. So you did quite a few jobs. An assaulter, sniper. I think you did. Well, of course, you were a medic as well, but K9. I mean, what did you like the best and why?
I love being a salter because it's your go, right?
Okay.
You're assaulting, you're clearing rooms. It's very fast, but it's very free flow. But I also like the sniper side. I like the slow, meticulous, methodical. Everything's very like, what do you call that? Procedural, right? Like
Mhm.
I lay in my gun. I have a procedure laying in my gun. I get down behind my scope. I set up my range card. I get my reference points. Like everything's very meticulous and very deliberate. Like I like that, and it's a little slower pace. So if you're an older guy, been around squadron for a bit, and you got these injuries from being there, and it's a little, I don't want to say easy. Nothing's easy, but physically, it's a little bit more of a slower pace, I guess, than being an assaulter. Kicking indoors and jumping off. I mean, you're still getting off little birds and doing that kind of stuff and helos, but it's a little lower impact. I'll say, not really, but
Mhm.
an assaulter.
Now, how did it work for you? I mean, for a lot of the guys on the outside looking in, there's that celebrity thing, in the community. Um, were there some notable people that you served with, and they're out there on Instagram or social media, and they're really good, awesome people? Or did you see people that were completely different from their social media presence? Like, dude, that dude is not a good guy.
I know you know me well because you just definitely struck a nerve. Hold on, let me take a quick pause.
Go for it. Is that whiskey you're drinking there, vodka? Or what is that?
Oh no, that's water.
I know it is, but that's a big jug. Moonshine.
Bourbon.
There you go.
Post range, I was cleaning my guns. Uh, trying to do a couple things at once, which I'm not real good at nowadays. But yeah, so there's a few guys out there that are huge celebrities on Instagram.
Mhm.
are some that were really great operators or
Yeah.
direct guys. Then there's some that were I mean, they were at the unit, so they know their shit. And they're really good at what they do. However, I I have I have a kind of a line that I like to draw when people ask me this question.
Mhm.
And I know I'm going to piss some people off, the older guys, really. And I have a lot of respect for some of those older guys. Some of those guys were Grenada and Panama vets or Desert Storm vets.
Mhm.
So this doesn't apply to everybody. However, there's a line because of the GWAT. You have the OIF, OEF timeline, and then you have before that the peacetime. We'll call it peacetime era.
Right.
The guys out there in the peacetime era that now are out there and they're big and to keep this professional, they didn't do a lot of stuff that the combat era operators did. Yet they kind of jump on that bandwagon.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to name names, but they're out there.
Yeah.
No, not saying they're not knowledgeable or intelligent. Some of them are fucking outstanding shooters. Probably some of the best shooters I've ever seen at flat paper targets that don't shoot back. And that's the fucking difference, my friend, is there's plenty of competitive shooters that'll smoke my ass in an El Prez or
Mhm.
whatever. And they're fucking fast because they've been doing it a long time. They got a lot of practice. They know all the shortcuts. But when you take, and Mike, you probably know this from experience, when fucking rounds are cracking past your head, you're taking somewhat accurate or effective fire, that changes the game, right? When your self-defense mechanisms, your survival mechanisms kick in and telling you you want to go hunker down and make yourself small and fucking wait it out, and you can't because now you're taking effective fire and you have to apply tactics. You have to fire and maneuver to survive the day, right? And that's a distinct difference. When I talk about, or people ask me about the Instagram heroes and the
Mhm.
social and all that, which I'm trying to become that, right? I have on my Instagram, I'm a wannabe gun bunny because I want free shit, I want free guns, who the fuck I am. So whatever. I'm envious, I guess. But
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think we talked about this for a minute, man, and it's good if you did it, make money. Why not? But it becomes bad when someone is faking it, even if they are, with a credible background, with training, et cetera, experience. I've never risen to that level, but at some point, it's a fine line. It's kind of like, okay, I like free stuff too, and I like cool stuff too, but I definitely I'm not going to give a good review on a product that it's just junk. Just not going to do it because someone's going to give me free stuff no matter where I go, regardless what my name is. But other people, they think otherwise. And it is kind of hard because, you can blow it up, the 100,000 followers or whatever, and make cash on it. But at some point, we talked about it. And it is difficult. You're sitting in a ravine and someone's shooting at you. You don't even know where they're at in the bushes. You can't even see them. You think differently. You know, how do you surround them? You don't know. Do you flank them here, flank them right? You have no clue.
different people have different
Yeah.
reactions. They have different psychological profiles and
Yeah.
all that stuff, right? There's stuff that people just can't control in their minds because their survival instincts overtake everything else.
Yeah.
Some have a switch that we can turn that off. Whether it's a blessing or a curse, I don't know. I know I'm alive today
Mhm.
because, but I know other people that didn't survive, good friends of mine. So whether it's a blessing or curse, I can't say. But there's no reason. We have a saying at the unit, it's not for everybody, right?
Mhm.
The bestest, strongest, fastest, best shooter, whatever, physical stud. But we're not looking for the best guys. We're looking for the right guys. And it's a balance of the physicality side and the mental capacity, right? The ability to process information in a short amount of time, to
Yeah.
make fast decisions based on that analysis, and to execute a plan to counter whatever the situation is, right? So it's not for everybody. Like, I have no ill will or talk shit about anybody that tried and didn't or whatever, man. Or maybe they became a support guy. Whatever. That place is a different place, man. It's not for everybody, and it's the best place to be in the military, though. I gotta say.
Yeah, I think probably one of the best ones is the movie Miracle, Kurt Russell. I know you've seen that, but they got this coach, and he's assembling all these players together to play hockey, and they got some studs out there. And he says, "I'm not looking for the best players. I'm looking to assemble a team," and they go on to beat the Russians, right? 1980 Olympics. It's freaking amazing. And was it 80 or was it 84? Boycott, I can't remember. Yeah. So awesome movie, but he really had a nose of putting together the right kind of people. So how did it work? I mean, did you do the gun training? You do all the physical training. Did you do any type of mindset training? Did you guys do training to prep you mentally for a lot of the missions you're going to do? I know in some of the other units, it's not there, but for you guys, was it?
Yes. Early on, you have head shrinks and psychs talk to you and give you classes and stuff. Mindset. There's so I'm just going to come out with some of the I don't want to say negative or positive, but some of the parts of the job that's not for everybody, right? You're going to be doing it every night. Sometimes you're going to do it a couple times a night. Do you have the mental psychological profile to where you can do that and then go home to your family after 3 months or 4 months and sleep and picnic and party and go to kids events and stuff like that and not have a fucking breakdown or kill everybody?
Yeah.
So yes, you do get training in that capacity. It's much better now than it was 15, 20 years ago because of head injuries and TBIs and PTSD and the research and stuff that's gone into all that. Because I remember my first they call it the head injury clinic or the brain injury clinic on Fort Bragg. We had to get some baseline study and testing done when I was an OTC. And this was very archaic and it's very early 2000s. What they do now compared to them is a world apart, and it's much better now. Especially like the treatments. Like almost all of us have traumatic brain injuries by the time we retire. Some have PTSD. I'm a fortunate one. I've never been diagnosed with PTSD. I've never shown any of those signs and symptoms, right? Thank God. I count my blessings every day, but I have friends that aren't that lucky or fortunate. And the research and development in that side is leaps and bounds in the last 15 years, honestly. So now it's much better than it was before, but we did do a little bit in the beginning when I started. I don't want to say the beginning. I'm not that old.
Well, I think you guys probably have a lot of those those effects after, right? So, TBI, you're dealing with all those blasts, putting the charges down, danger close kind of situation. So, I mean, it affects you. I mean, let's talk about that. I mean, so let's talk about your deployments. You do a lot of contact. Do you see a lot of contact at all? And some people walk away from it kind of shaking and said, "This is not for me." I knew a guy in the schoolhouse who was not for him, and he quit. He said he was a Green Beret. He said, "I'm out." I mean, and some people love it.
That's kind of what I mentioned before, man. It's not for everybody, right?
Yeah.
And you'll figure that out if if you're lucky enough to survive a firefight and realize it's not for you. Like, you will never know till that moment. I mean, there's really no way in training to prepare you for that. They can add stress. They can add, time constraints. They can add, guys in the catwalk watching you, all this different types of stress, but you'll never know till you're in that firefight. I kind of lost my train of thought. So the TBI side, I've had concussions before.
Mm-hmm.
In the Army, I did a lot of martial arts, a lot of kickboxing and sparring. So I got hit in the head a lot. My biggest event for traumatic brain injury was not combat related. I was cycling. I was training to do triathlons, and I got hit by a car.
Dang.
Yeah, I had all my lumbar vertebrae were. I broke my pelvis. I broke some small bones in my feet, my ribs, and I had bilateral hematomas, subdural hematomas in my brain. And I was under the. They were watching me for a while, right? I was doing monthly CT and stuff like that. I was in a back brace for 6 months, and they were kind of on the fence of keeping me in or medically retiring me, and things worked out, right? My blessing there, and I stayed. They kept me around. Another great thing about that place, they will go through a lot of rehab and therapy and finding modalities to help guys get better to keep them, which is awesome. Because if I was in fifth group, they were like, yeah, we're medically discharging that guy. I know guys that sent home packing like me, torn ACLs. Oh yeah, so. Yeah,
so when did you know that it was time to retire, man? I mean, was it some people say, the wife says I'm leaving with the kids. Other people have got an injury, maybe TBI, and it's affected them. When did you know it was time to go pack your bags?
Kind of a few things, I guess. Really hard Little Bird Landing. I was kind of a yard sale on that income. So I, another concussion. I jacked my back up, which was already broken previous to that a few years. You mentioned a lot of charges, right? Being in really close proximity to numbers and volumes of explosive energy takes its toll over time, especially with previous TBIs. Even shooting in confined space, CQB in small rooms, that gunfire, those single shots that you're taking, those are small you're being concussed micro level hundreds and hundreds of times over years. And it all takes its toll. It all adds up. And there's kind of days where you're like, I call it a bad day where like, what the fuck was I doing in the shoot house? Like, I lost my train of thought. Or driving in the traffic circle in Pinehurst, North Carolina, and going through a couple times, I'm like, where the fuck was I going just now? Oh yeah, I was going home from the gym. So
yeah.
There's a point in time where that was happening more than I like. And it was right around that 20. It was actually the 19-year mark. So the 20-year mark, the last thing that did me in was dog training. I tore my ACL doing decoy work in Virginia Beach with our Navy counterpart, doing a canine seminar with those guys. Tore my ACL, and then that was like 9 months of surgery and rehabilitation, and it's like get close to the 20-year mark. It's probably time to hang it up, man. And that's kind of when I did, because it came down to do I want to maintain how it makes me feel being an operator, and it's probably ego, right?
Yeah.
Measuring, do I need to keep doing this, or do I need to think about it maybe possibly becoming a liability more than an asset? And that's kind of what I did.
So how was it for you when you separated? I mean, a lot of people don't have anything waiting for them on the outside. I mean, how did you adjust? Did you adjust?
Yeah, it took a little while.
Yeah.
My civilian job, was a contract company managing a soft canine program. And that was because of my previous 2 years working dogs in our community. And that was a great job. I got a lot of experience training different levels of dogs. The company kind of sucked. And eventually they laid off a bunch of people because of business development or lack of. And I started my company after that. So I've been doing training and consulting on and off, either as my main job or as a side business since 2014. I do have a full-time job I've been doing for 3 years now as a program manager at JSOC. I manage a tactics program.
Nice. It's very cool, man. So, I mean, you've done probably pretty much everything you've, tried to do since childhood, right? I mean, some people have these regrets and it just chews them up and eats them up. And looks like you've accomplished that, man. So where are you at now? What are you doing? Talk to me about your current state of affairs.
So I started Storm Tactical Consulting. Initially, it was canine heavy. I did a lot of canine stuff. That was the name Storm. That was from the first working dog, or not really a working dog. She was a protection dog I trained in the 90s. She was a pit bull terrier. That was my first dog I ever trained. So I named the company after her. And I was doing a lot of canine stuff with like BORTAC, Rangers, DevGru, some other units, some SF groups. And then it evolved into shooting. I did a lot of rope stuff because I kind of had some specialties from being on climbing teams and stuff like some recce stuff, observation, and long range marksmanship, that kind of stuff. And I was doing pretty good, but I'd have months where I was turning jobs away because I was so busy. But then I'd have months where I was like, man, I hope I can make that mortgage payment because I haven't done a job in 2 months, sitting around twiddling my thumbs. So I came to a point like 3 years ago where a buddy of mine in JSOC came to me. It's like, hey, if you want to run a breaching program and tactics program at this JSOC unit, I'm like, fuck yeah. And I interviewed, I got the job, and I've been doing that for like 3 years now. I still do the consulting and training on the side, but that's like my full-time job now.
Very cool, man. So you're on Instagram too, right? As Storm Tactical Consulting, I think it is. And you got a YouTube page as well. I think, how's that working out for you?
Yep, YouTube. I started a Patreon account like literally a few days ago.
Okay.
YouTube is YouTube, and unless you have like 1 million subscribers, you're not going to really see any revenue. So I started some other channels. I'm also doing stuff with Grey Hive, a subscription service.
Yeah, Grey Hive.
Yep, and there's a couple other small companies I consult for. You'll see them pop up if anyone follows my social media, I'll post stuff on it. And then there's always, as usual, my spotterup.com.
I was going to say, but you want to bring it up. Hey, I'm not going to complain. So Fred does a couple of product reviews for SpotUp.com. He's been awesome. It's always good to have a good opinion because we've had some junk, and we don't want to tell our readers wrong, man, and have them buy junk that they're going to deploy with. It's just going to screw up your life. But what's your advice to someone, man, starting out as a young man and dreaming? I mean, what's the biggest thing that they should take with them? Drive? What is it? Mindset?
Mindset huge, right? The psycho factor, that's what makes or breaks most folks when they're doing really difficult physical tasks with little to no sleep, little to no food, little to no information, which is a big one. I would say if I was thinking about going into the Green Berets or the Rangers or Delta or SEALs or Air Force Combat Control / PJ, whatever your dreams or aspirations are, do the research because everything's on the internet nowadays. Do research on the selection stuff, the physical events that you need to accomplish. What are the standards? And then start working those events. You might be horrible at swimming with boots and BDUs on. Like I was the first time I jumped in the pool with boots and BDUs in 1992. And I'm like, wow, this is fucking hard. Because I didn't know the technique. I didn't know how to relax, right? Figure that shit out. Go to YouTube, go to these Instagram and social media platforms, video streaming services. Look up swim tests. Look up, the Ranger, RASP assessment entrance exams, PT tests. If you want to be a combat controller, what's the indoctrination? Research all that stuff and start training those events. Talk to the guys that have done it. Vet your trainers. I say vet your trainers because that's hard. Because there's a fucking 1,000 Instagram and Facebook fucking experts. They're not. They say that because you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
So, questions. Talk to guys like, John. They have huge websites devoted to that stuff. There's others out there. I'm not going to name them all because my memory sucks, but just do your research, get good at the physical stuff, and then start thinking about mindset. Talk to guys like Fred or Mike or Dutch or whoever and talk about mindset. What do I need to be programming my mind to think? Because what worked for me might not work for this guy.
Yeah.
I don't know how to I don't know where that switch is, that psychological switch to turn off, but I know I can do it because I've done it, right? And you just got to figure out how to do that, how to be uncomfortable and
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah. So let's talk about your successes and regrets. Is there any big failure that you know, is something you've got the time now to work on? Is there anything you regret that you had to push aside that you could do? And
My biggest regret is my first marriage.
okay.
And it's kind of a joke, but not really. It's a serious subject. Never make your career or future goals and decisions based on a relationship, and a young relationship. If you've been married for 20 years, then that's different. But if you're like shacked up with some girl or guy and they're like, oh, you shouldn't go SF because you'll be gone all the time, like, because then you delay stuff or you postpone it or you make excuses for yourself. Oh, that's hard. My wife don't like it. My girlfriend don't like it, so I'm not going to do it. And then eventually they show their true colors. You find out their bipolar disorder, whatever the case may be. Do it later, and you're like a 40-year-old man. I'm not a 40-year-old man. I'm much older. And you're like, man, I wish I had done this sooner, right? Because I had 30 years in special ops instead of 20 years in special ops or whatever. Don't make lifelong or career decisions based on short-term relationships. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So what do you want to be remembered for, Fred? You know, if there's anything that you've accomplished now, you've done it. You know, I mean, let's put it this way: you go to Waffle House or somewhere, and people say, you know, what did you do before? How do you introduce yourself, man? I mean, you know, you just my name's Fred, and I was in the military. Or
I like to think I'm a humble guy, so I don't have the elevator speech with a short list on my resume.
Yeah.
I probably need to be better about that because that's why I'm such a fucking failure on social media because I don't like to talk about myself. But I kind of say, yeah, I did a lot of things. I was a sous chef. I was in special operations. I was a Green Beret. I was a combat veteran. Now I continue serving the war fighters in a different role as the old guy, imparting wisdom and mentorship on those guys. Hey, don't do it that way because when I was in Fallujah in 2004, I watched that go bad. You know, like, so that's kind of my thing now is like mentoring the young guys and giving them advice based on lessons learned the hard way, blood, sweat, tears, whatever, loss of comrades. That's kind of where I'm at now. But
no, as long as I've known you, man, and I'm gonna say this, you know, as long as I've known Fred, Fred has never compromised his core beliefs to get likes and get out there and I say whore himself out like a lot of people. So I'd say that. And the other thing about you, Fred, that I've known is you're reliable. If I sent you something, you take care of it and you get back, or you say I can't do it, or if you have no interest in it, you say don't. And I appreciate that because there are a lot of people who have ripped me off or have done, you know, wrong things, but you've always been solid. That's good. You know, it's good to have people, and some of the worst people are in the community, man. So, Fred is a solid guy, and yeah, he only has 13,000 Instagram, but those are hard earned. You know, those are earned properly. Never bought any likes and didn't have to, you know, do some silly stuff, some TikTok videos to get out there. So I appreciate that about you, Fred.
Next on the menu, TikTok.
How is it? If you do TikTok videos, I'm unfriending you, man. So that's just the way it's going to work. Cool, man. So listen, I appreciate you coming on. Is there anything I missed, man? Anything you want to talk about, bring up that we didn't cover?
Last thing you talked about, how do you want to be remembered and, you know, your legacy, whatever.
Yeah.
My two kind of things that I always talk about, and you may have heard me mention this, two traits or qualities now that are hard to find in people than they were 30 years ago is loyalty and integrity.
Yeah.
And I say that because my own good friends over the last few years, you know, you have to reevaluate your position in life every once in a while, right? And loyalty and integrity, man. Those are your two guidelines that you should kind of evaluate every decision, everything you do in life, every friend you make, every, business associate, whatever, because they're harder and harder to find nowadays.
I'd say you're right, man. It is very, very hard to find in a world of very strange shifting values where truth is relative and people don't have these core beliefs. You have people who are not very ethical. And I'm just talking about the veteran community, even law enforcement community. So, we have a duty to get out there and try to do the best that we can and challenge ourselves and challenge others, as you said, man, to have, be a good role model. So, guys, I want you to follow Fred on Storm Tactical Consulting on Instagram, please, on YouTube. He's also on Patreon. I don't know if he's on Rumble, but he's out there. Please, you're gonna be on. You're on Rumble.
Yep, I
Awesome.
will be.
All right,
Already.
cool. Well, I'm gonna have to put that in the liner notes down on YouTube. Fred, thanks for coming on, brother. Don't go anywhere. Go ahead. One more thing.
One more thing, man. One more thing. And this is recent events, and some other guys I know are doing this. I'm going to put this, if there's any school resource officers out there in my area, I'm in the southeastern U.S., all right? And there's going to be logistics and backside for this, like range space and so forth. If you're a school security, school police, resource officer, what have you, I will give you free training, pistol, rifle, whatever you're working with, even de-escalation for free, all right? Hit me up on one of my platforms.
Awesome.
And say, hey, Fred, I listen. I'm one of those SROs. Tell me what we need to do, because shit's getting bad, man.
Yeah,
It is getting ugly,
yeah.
and they want guns away. How the fuck is that going to help anybody? I'm not getting political, but I try to avoid religion and politics. But that was all I had to say.
Awesome. All right. Hey, don't go anywhere, man. I'm going to chat with you after we sign off. But guys, please like, subscribe, share, tell your friends, ring the bell. And thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And we'll talk to you soon.